Perhaps I should rephrase the question. Are you content on this path you have embarked upon? Always bear in mind that this is his crusade. It need not be your life as well. Today on the Comic Book Report, Batgirl Year One, Robin Year One. Stick around and check it out. Greetings from Gotham, everyone. My name is Dominic, and you're tuning in to the Comic Book Report, where we review comic books and graphic novels so you can get an idea of what to read. And today, I've got a really special collection for you. Today, we'll be taking a closer look at Batgirl Year One and Robin Year One in this one trade paperback collection. I've had this book in my library for some time, but I finally finished it up, and I think it's finally time to give this a review. Let's get started. First, some quick facts about today's collection. The issues in this volume were written by Chuck Dixon and Scott Beatty, and illustrated by Marcos Martin and Javier Pulido. The issues in this volume were published by DC Comics beginning in 2000. The volume itself collects Robin Year One, issues 1 through 4, and Batgirl Year One, issues 1 through 9. And finally, this trade paperback collection comes in at 421 pages. At this time, I'd like to issue a general spoiler warning. I will be flipping through the contents of today's collection and commenting on plot points throughout. You've been advised. Okay, and here's our first look at today's trade paperback collection, and it's a big one. So this is a beautiful little collection here. It includes both Batgirl Year One as well as Robin Year One. Both of those miniseries are included in this one paperback volume. This edition itself is a standard size collection with nice glossy print pages. I believe at the time of this recording, this collection is currently out of print. Like I said earlier, I've had it in my collection for some time, but I decided to dust it off and finally finish it up, and it was really fun. And as we finish reviewing the exterior work for this book, you'll get a nice idea here of the kind of art you can see included in these issues. Really gorgeous and vivid stuff throughout. And with the exteriors out of the way, it's about time we dive into the collection itself. So as we dive in here, I'll just go ahead and speak briefly on how this is mapped. This collection is set up where we go through all of the Robin Year One miniseries first, followed by the Batgirl miniseries. And I will say, even though it sounds like there might be over twice as much Batgirl content, overall this collection is pretty evenly split, leading me to believe that those Robin issues are quite a bit longer than the Batgirl issues. As far as what this collection really is, like I said, it's a collection of two miniseries, the Batgirl Year One and Robin Year One. This is really similar in idea to like the Batman Year One by Frank Miller that came out obviously years before this. I know there's also been Green Arrow Year One, Nightwing Year One, I think there might even be a Superman Year One. I really can't keep track, but these are all, their own thing, trying to describe either the origin or like the early year or beginnings of these crime fighters. And so this one, of course, deals with Robin, Dick Grayson, to clarify, and Batgirl, Barbara Gordon. The Robin Year One story begins in the middle of the action. We have some criminals sort of discussing amongst themselves that Batman has a kid partner before we're introduced to him fighting crime alongside Batman. It's a really exciting opener to this series, and right away you are just hooked. I personally was captivated by the artwork throughout this entire collection. I'm not usually one that likes a more cartoony art style, but the way that this was done was so punchy and in my face and vivid and just gorgeous. I felt myself just so enamored with the world they created, the colors, and the character models were really well done. Every character was pretty distinctive, and it gave me a real sense of place and tone that both conveyed the kind of character drama with the lighthearted theatrics of some of these characters. I think why I enjoy Robin Year One in particular is how it explores the psyche of a young Dick Grayson. We've seen his origin, we've seen early Dick Grayson Robin throughout the history of comics, but I have to say that this is one of my favorites. You get his playfulness, you get his sad kind of tragic moments, and you get his bravery. I really like how much this is just fully centered on him. Another Robin origin story I really love that I did review on my channel once upon a time was Jeff Loeb, Tim Sale's Batman Dark Victory. That itself was a sequel to Batman The Long Halloween, and I consider it more or less a masterpiece. And yet, that more primarily focused on Batman. This is really a story about Robin, following the point of view of Robin, Dick Grayson, throughout. And I really liked it. We got to also see quite a bit of the Batman Rogues Gallery in these early days. I think we can see people like Mad Hatter, we can see Mr. Freeze, we can see Two-Face. We just get to see the Rogues Gallery out in full effect, and I really enjoyed that. I also always love seeing these beloved characters in new artistic styles, so this was definitely a welcome showing. I think another thing I loved about Robin Year One is it also explored the kind of nuanced relationship at this early stage with Commissioner Gordon, who I don't even believe is a commissioner yet in these early books, but we have this kind of troubled and tense relationship where his relationship with Batman is still very new, and introducing a kid into the playing field, so to speak, is a very tense proposition between them. At one point, it looks like Robin is severely injured, and Gordon is really unhappy about it, and he wants to almost go to war with Batman. There's a level of mistrust and doubt in that relationship, and I really think that it pulls into play just how dangerous it is to have a kid on these missions. And I really liked that. I feel like most other books I read with Batman and Robin, they don't really explore the nature of that quite as much. And I think if you look at the history of the Robins, I mean, a couple of them have died. So, of course, some of them have come back, maybe all of them. But still, I think that it's a really good issue that this comic brings up in its own way. And even within that tension, we still have Robin emerging as this brave warrior who's not only a faithful sidekick, but an absolutely essential element to Batman's war on crime. And we get to see him as a hero in his own right, and we really get to see the purpose he serves and his function within this team. Another character that's really wonderfully used in both of these miniseries is the character of Alfred Pennyworth, the beloved butler and paternal figure in the Bat family, outside of Batman, of course. So maybe a grandfather figure. Hard to say. At any rate, he's used with much humor and really also as just a sounding board for what's going on with this situation as more children or young adults get grafted into this war on crime. And I think that there's this kind of voice of reason and this man-in-the-middle aspect to Alfred in these stories that I really like. I think in Batgirl, he's much more of a facilitator. In the Robin Year One story, it is more of, again, a kind of sounding board, a discussion point, a counterpoint to Bruce Wayne in some ways. But overall, I really like it. I always love Alfred in the comics. He's almost always done very well, and I just wanted to make sure I didn't gloss over his presence in this work. At any rate, Robin Year One certainly has a lot of twists and turns, but I was absolutely eager for the ride. There's a playfulness here, like I mentioned, but there's a lot of also action, violence, and character drama. It's definitely one worth reading, and while it might not hold the same shelf with Batman Year One as kind of essential reading and an absolute classic, for me, it should be talked about much more than I feel like it is. Now, I may be a little biased because Dick Grayson is my favorite Robin character. I also really like Damian, and frankly, all the Robins are kind of great. But I do love that Dick Grayson is the Robin of Robin Year One in this collection. I think you could make fascinating subsequent follow-ups to this with the other Robins, who all have their own distinct personalities, of course. But there's something about starting with the OG Robin from the comics, starting with Dick Grayson. I think also just taking this in scope of knowing he becomes Nightwing, knowing he grows up, and knowing he has his own mantle and this own thing he carries. To see it go all the way back to his first year fighting crime, to see those early relationships, to see another perspective into this character's head, to see how he operates, to see what's there in the foundations at the core. Again, it just sheds more light. It just fills out that character even more, so that when I read other works, even when I read things like Tom Taylor's Nightwing, it's informed knowing some of this stuff I know about Robin in the early days here. And I love that about comic books. I love that about this big universe that a lot of these companies make, where we have so many creators, so many stories over the years that we can kind of composite our own image of who these characters are based on what we've read of them. And I think that this absolutely enriches my reading of Robin, Nightwing, Dick Grayson. Before I bridge the gap over to the Batgirl Year One series, one other thing I'll say about this volume that I do really enjoy is that both of these, since they are created by basically the same crew here, both of these stories seem to be set in the same universe and they kind of pull into each other a bit. What I mean by that is Batgirl Year One, which did come out after Robin Year One, definitely has this Robin Year One character in it. We get to see a lot of the same relationships, we get to see a lot of the same playfulness, and you can definitely tell there's just a continuity between these two stories that make reading them in one collection like this definitely a very fun facet of this work. And there's definitely some carryover, like I said, with that tension between Gordon and Batman regarding bringing children into this war on crime, things like that, and the amount of trust that Gordon has or doesn't have in Batman at this stage in their relationship. That is definitely explored more in Batgirl Year One. I'll get into that in a moment, I'm sure, but basically there's a period where in Batgirl Year One that Gordon believes that Batgirl may in fact be his daughter Barbara. Suffice it to say, tensions mount. Like I said, I think this is out of print at the time of my recording, but if you can find a used copy or a copy of this somewhere, I definitely recommend reading if this interests you at all. I know you can probably also find this single issues or on digital, and who knows, maybe they'll bring a reprint back, or maybe we'll see a nice hardcover of this one day. I would definitely consider double dipping in that case. And now I want to go ahead and spend some time talking about Batgirl Year One, which follows directly after the Robin Year One storyline in this collection, as mentioned earlier. So I'll say right from the jump, we know that Barbara is older than Robin in this universe. We know Batgirl is a couple years older in this miniseries. So I'm not really even clear if she's a young adult versus a teenager. It kind of is a little vague unless I missed a detail somewhere. I know she's still living at home with her dad, Jim Gordon, who is, of course, an amazing cop, if not yet commissioner. And so there's this interesting tension where you see her as a bit older, whether she's an older teen or, like I said, like a young adult who's still living at home with her dad. She's trying to figure out her job and kind of her career and her life. And she has all these skills, you know, she's good with technology. She has kind of a crime-fighting bend. She's athletic. She's wondering where she fits and kind of where she should go. And in the midst of all of that, we have her pulled into this life where she ultimately becomes Batgirl, then Oracle, then Batgirl again. And we get to see kind of the origin within this book here. And I think that that's something I really like about Batgirl Year One. We get to see all the beginnings. We get to see everything take place and unfold. And like I said, I really enjoyed that. It also starts kind of in medias res, where Batgirl's fighting at this kind of masquerade costume party of some kind, and we get a sequence of flashbacks. The flashbacks, again, establishes her as a woman who's trying to kind of find her way, her career. We see her in a martial arts class. We see her hard at work at the computers. We see her, again, just showing her smarts, showing her brawn, and just trying to, again, figure out where she fits. In the midst of all of that, we also know that she really looks up to Black Canary on the Justice League. We have some cool cameo appearances from like Wildcat and Dr. Fate. Later in this book, we actually see Black Canary, her and Batgirl team up at one point, which I love. We also briefly see Green Arrow, which was another cool facet of this collection. But at any rate, we kind of have her sort of condemned or chided for wanting to be sort of a costume vigilante. She's kind of looked down upon or shunned a little bit. And anyway, through a weird sequence of events, she follows a kind of lead, wants to go to this costume party, and makeshifts a Batman costume for herself that's kind of a Batgirl, of course. And in the midst of the party, like legit violence breaks out. A kind of masked supervillain sort of figure appears, and Batgirl fights them off. There's, of course, coverage of this event, and now all of a sudden, Gotham has a Batgirl. I really like this approach because we have this really ambitious young woman trying to find her way, maybe getting a little bit in over her head initially, but really having a sense of purpose and a drive. And we have her kind of on the radar of not only the supervillains within Gotham, but this puts her on the radar of Batman and Robin. So a really prevalent dynamic within Batgirl Year One is her trying to juggle stopping some of the villains that arise and try to menace her. Characters like Killer Moth and Firefly, who are the main villains, I would say, overall in this collection. We also have some kind of mob figures throughout Gotham, but we have her juggling sort of that dynamic along with trying to figure herself out as a new costumed hero in Batgirl, but also trying to juggle what to do with Batman and Robin. Batman wants to have nothing to do with her. She's this unknown element. He doesn't even initially know who she is, and he's just trying to make it stop. Doesn't want to endanger another young person, just doesn't want to have anything to do with that. Robin is kind of smitten, thinks that she's beautiful and capable and really has something to offer the team. He also says he knows right away that this is Barbara Gordon. He would know this hair anywhere, and the world's greatest detective might not have caught on to it yet. So anyway, at any rate, there is a lot of interplay between all of those subplots and elements weaved throughout all 9 issues of this miniseries, but I think it's done really effectively, and overall the collection is really well paced. The art, again, is very consistent and has that gorgeous sort of cartoony style, and there is a lot of fun with this as well, as Barbara Gordon is also an intensely fun and lively, charismatic character. There's also this sort of initiative and gumption that this character has, that she's just kind of gonna do it and succeed no matter what. And no matter who's telling her she can't do it or don't do it or leave, she's just kind of pushing through perseverantly to find her voice, to find her place, and to find her role as a hero in this community. And ultimately we see that come into fruition. Throughout this book as well, we have this dynamic where it looks like she's failed this test that Batman eventually gives her to try to vet whether she should be a Batgirl, but Robin sort of sneaks out and gives her a motorcycle and sends gear to her house and just is trying to give her every opportunity to still succeed. As we go further, it might look like Robin and Batman are actually colluding and are both kind of rooting for her if she can kind of pass these tests. At any rate, it's a really good setup. I also personally really love the kind of romance angles we got between Dick Grayson and Barbara Gordon. I'm always a big Robin, Batgirl, romance fan, and we get to see little inklings of this here. I think they treat Robin a bit younger, and Batgirl wants to kind of write him off, and yet he is so supportive and charming toward her that there's these little kind of winks at the camera, so to speak, where us as an audience know that there are some sparks between these two characters, if not totally within this volume itself. But again, overall, a really well-written book here. I really liked it. Like I said, I like that there seems to be some interplay and kind of continuity between this and Robin Year One. I also really loved that we get to see Batgirl kind of do her own thing and only sort of loosely be shepherded by Batman and Robin throughout this work. Like Robin Year One, this is really focused on Barbara Gordon Batgirl to its advantage. We really follow her as the primary point of view character for this work, and it's just done really well. I also think it was really rich to know from the same writers we got a different interior life here. This sounded so much different than Robin, and there was such distinct characterization here that it's really just amazing to have the level of cohesion and continuity between these two works, but to have such a very good concrete sense of voice from these two different characters. Again, as far as the plot goes, ultimately it boils down to Batman confronting Killer Moth and Firefly. We get to see that done just unbelievably great. The dynamic between Gordon and Barbara Gordon was also really cool to see that father-daughter relationship through a kind of criminal justice standpoint as well, a crime-fighting standpoint. Overall, there's a lot of twists and turns in this as well. Couldn't recommend it highly enough. If I had to pick my favorite between the two miniseries in this collection, I'm not even sure I could pick. They're both outstanding, really great reads. The art is lush and incredible, and I really feel like these were both absolutely additive to the mythos of both Dick Grayson's Robin and Barbara Gordon's Batgirl. And as you can see here at the back of the book here, we're treated to a handful of extras. Just an outstanding paperback here. Would love to get this in an oversized hardcover someday, and hopefully they reprint it for those out there who might want to check it out. But really a great set of reads here. I'm so happy I was able to revisit, and I think all that's left now is to give this a grade. While it might not stand toe-to-toe with Batman Year One by Frank Miller, Batgirl Year One and Robin Year One should not be underestimated. Both of these books in this incredible trade paperback collection deserve a read for all those out there who enjoy these characters, or the Bat family, or larger Bat mythos. The art throughout the collection is gorgeous, lush, and absolutely attention-grabbing, and for all these reasons and more, the Comic Book Report is happy to give Batgirl Year One, Robin Year One an A-. That's right. I think that this is comfortably in a must-read category for me, for all of those comic book fans out there. Again, especially on the DC side of the fence, a great read and one I'm certain I'll revisit in the future. If you're interested, please check out these titles, and that's going to do it today for the Comic Book Report. Until next time, please don't forget to leave a like, a comment, and if you haven't yet, consider subscribing to the channel. Thank you so much, and have a good one.